Hi, this is Pat Iyer with Writing to Get Business, and I have with me today Steve Cadigan, who is the author of a new book. It is called Workquake, and it has some fascinating insights about how our work life and our work systems have changed in the 20th century. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I know that our viewers are going to be interested in knowing about your background. What led you to write this book? And first of all, is it your first book? Let me start with that question.
Yes, this is absolutely my first book. And I've probably wanted to do this for years and years. And I finally suppressed my procrastinating inner urges and did it.
And those procrastinating inner urges are so effective. Steve, why don't we clean out the closet? Steve, why don't we polish up the resume instead?
Yeah.
They have all messages for us.
That's right. I love in college. I was a history major and I did a lot of reading and writing. And that was back in the, dare I say, days when we didn't have computers, we had typewriters. And I couldn't start working on a paper until my room was clean. I don't know why, but I needed to clean my room first. And I was much more productive in that setting. And I think it's carried through in my later years.
I do find that a messy desk is distracting. I like a sense of order. However, my husband, whose office is about 20 feet from where I'm sitting, does not display that tendency. There's crap all over, and he doesn't see it, and it doesn't bother him.
That's great. Well, listen, to answer your question, just a little bit about my background. I've been in the talent field for probably 35 years, and some people refer to it as human resources. But those of you who aren't familiar with that craft, it's really helping organizations with people, hiring, inspiring, organizing, communicating, dealing with culture and employee relations and dispute resolutions and a whole bunch of things. And over the course of my career, I started to see trends that really I felt were not healthy, and trends of discontent from both employers and employees. And I didn't see that anyone out there was articulating what was really at the root of this, and that we're having what I call wrong conversations around impediments to people feeling good about work and impediments to employers feeling good about their how to lead and inspire and hire great talent. And while I was thinking about these things, I started to notice in the news that all the discussion of the future of work is fear-based. And I call it the worst marketing campaign in history, that we are scaring everybody. You know, all the jobs tomorrow don't even exist today. And the skills you have today are not going to be helpful to you in the future. Robots, AI, automation's going to replace you. And I found those fundamentally unsatisfying. And I truly believe that being a human has never been more important. And so I wanted to change the conversation. Of course, technology, we need to reconcile in our future, but let's have the discussion and incorporate that in a way that amplifies our humanity and provides a better outcome for all of us, employees and employers. And so that was the inspiration for me to write the book, is to change the conversation from fear to inspiration, and to showcase stories of people and companies that are taking a different approach and finding good results.
And I know from what you've just said that you are well connected and have had experience with working for some very large companies. In your book, you've drawn on those experiences to a very deep level and brought in the comments and impressions and opinions of others. Tell our listener how you sought out those people, how you found them, how you posed to them, I'm writing this book and I'm interested in your thoughts about X. Or did you do it completely different?
No, it's interesting that you asked that, because I didn't think about the methodology of gaining insights. For me, it was a combination. I'm an avid consumer of articles, love reading. And so when I see something interesting, I save it in a folder online to come back to. And I'm speaking around the world. I mean, prior to the pandemic, I actually traveled. If I know it's hard to imagine today, but in doing that, I would run into people and I would have really interesting discussions around work and so forth. And some of those conversations, I would remember the person and I went back to and formally interviewed them for my book. So it was a combination of people I knew from work experiences, as you mentioned. I've worked in 3 different countries, Singapore, Canada, and the US, 5 or 6 different industries. And it's given me a really good, diverse point of view. And it allowed me the opportunity to come across some fascinating people with different insights. And then in the last 10 years, when I stopped working for someone and started working for myself, that really opened up the diversity of, many new people in many new places. And I would attend, whether it was conferences or teaching a class at a university in London or in Asia. I would run into really interesting people with insights. And so I would start to gather these things. And when it came time to, I need to assemble this, I started calling in on these people and say, would you be interested in having a formal place in the book?
And then did you interview them over Zoom and get a transcript of what they said?
What I used was I used a site called Rev. And that was a recommendation from a friend of mine who's a writer. And what Rev does is that you call in to Rev and then you conference call the person you are speaking with. And then it auto produces a transcript of the call. And I thought, wow, this is great technology. I actually think there are people typing this somewhere. They call it a mechanical Turk, where there was a few times they would send it back. I'm like, no, you missed this, or you flip-flopped my name and the other person's name. So it's not perfect, but I think it's pretty affordable. It's like $1 a minute, something like that. And so I used that. I tried to take notes and it just didn't work because I couldn't be in the moment and taking the notes effectively. And so I used that to pretty good effect. Yeah. And then, the other thing I use, which is, I don't know if other people are doing this, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I would quote people from podcasts. And that was a great source because someone's being interviewed by somebody else and you're just sitting there and going, whoa, that's a really great insight. It completely fits my argument or my point of view that I want to make here. So I've got about a dozen of those referred to in my book, where I heard someone on a podcast go, whoa, that's exactly said way better than I could have said on my own. And so I grabbed it. Yeah.
There is content all around us, isn't there?
Yeah, it is plentiful.
Now, you just said that you went out on your own 10 years ago. You transitioned from being an employee to being an entrepreneur. And in your book, you said, we're all entrepreneurs. Tell me more about that.
Well, I sit here in Silicon Valley, and that is the dream of many people who come here, just like every actor goes to Hollywood. A lot of entrepreneurs come here, and I've never considered myself an entrepreneur. I am risk averse. I am a great soldier is not the right word, but I'm a great team player. Like I love being on teams and contributing, but I'm not someone I have lots of novel ideas. So I never thought I was an entrepreneur. And in the course of writing this book, I think, and reading many other perspectives on entrepreneur, I think all of us have dimensions of that. Maybe we're not comfortable going and raising money from somebody or creating an idea from nothing, but all of us have dimensions of being entrepreneurs and pursuing an idea and building a living out of it. And it's so much easier today than say 20 years ago. You can have an idea and create a course and sell it online. And now you're an entrepreneur. You're doing your own thing. So I don't consider myself an entrepreneur as in I am creating some technical product, but I definitely feel there are pieces of my being an entrepreneur where I'm just supporting my family by doing my own thing and having multiple clients, which is not easy, way harder than I thought, but it's doable. It's absolutely doable, and you know that from your own experiences, but that's what I wanted to try to do in that section of the book is demystify and bring the the perspective that entrepreneurs are this unreachable rare species, and that, I'm not that, and say, no, if I can do this, you can do it. And look at all these other people who are working in nonprofits that stumbled onto doing incredible things. And they're entrepreneurs, and you can be too.
And when I think about that concept, I think it's on a continuum. You can have people who are treated as entrepreneurs or creative people generating ideas to improve a company, who are in the employee role. And then you have the entrepreneurs who are having side gigs, which you address in your book. And then the people who are totally self-employed. When I read your book and saw that statement, I thought about my babysitter's husband, who was a union carpenter. And when he was not working, we asked him to come to our house to renovate our bathroom. And in our enthusiasm, in the beginning of this experience, we said to him, and we need to have the kitchen counters changed and the flooring changed. Is that a project you could take on? And he said to me, Pat, I'm a carpenter. I'm a union carpenter. I am not a general contractor. I am not interested in doing that. And I thought, but you're out of work and we'll pay you to do it. And this would be great. And then we realized, no, it isn't great. I'm wondering if somewhere along the line, individuals get that beaten out of them, that ability to think beyond. As I envisioned, he was in a lucite box with a lid on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew where his dimensions were. He wasn't going to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think this starts for some areas of the world in grade school. Your place is to be a passive learner. We'll tell you what you need to know. And you need to be respectful of the authority, and not, and suppress your intellectual curiosity, and your expression of your individuality. And that plays out. I've been in human resources my whole career. And one of the dimensions of that I have to look over in every organization I've been in is performance management. We're going to rate you. We're going to rank you. And I hate it. I never liked grades in school. I got pretty good grades, but I never liked it. And I never thought it was fair. And I wasn't a good person at taking tests. And so I've tried to, have a different conversation in organizations around this, such as, we're here to create value, and so we're trying to, that's what we need to do. We may believe that giving someone a rating and ranking is producing the right outcome, but we're boxing them in potentially, or we're missing something. And, what benefit do we get by doing that? And they say, well, how do we know what to pay them if we don't put a rating on them? And so, this is one of the things in this phase of my chapter of my life that I'm trying to do, is hold a mirror up to organizations and say, we're doing some things that don't really make sense, that maybe they were implemented for good reasons at different times in history, but I'm not sure they make sense now. And I'll give you another example in the corporate world, similar to the example you just gave, which is, I was meeting with an executive in a very large telecom company in Spain a few years ago. And I said, what's your biggest challenge? And she said, I have a captive employee population that we designed to keep here. And now all they want to do is stay, but not do anything. That our system was motivating tenure, not innovation and not new ideas. And the statutory laws are prohibitive for me to let them go, because it would cost like 10 years of pay to let them go, versus I just have to let them stay. I said, so your systems that you built have created what I call people playing career defense. They're not playing to create or innovate. They're playing not to get fired. And so that's the system you built. I mean, you can be upset at those people, but that system you built is delivering that outcome. And so and that person didn't build it themselves. They inherited it, but that's another thing that I see where I'm like, be careful what you're building for, in some of these organizations, because you'll have some unintended consequences sometimes.
That's one of my favorite ways to eliminate the word failure. You don't fail, Steve. You have unintended consequences.
Exactly.
One of the points that you made in your book was that we are well beyond any era of you start working in a company, you stay there for 20 years, 40 years, you retire with a huge party and the gold watch. I think your number was like an average of 2.8 years of longevity in a company. How does that influence how companies manage and lead their employees?
Well, I have to tell you, we are in the throes of a massive transformation relative to what you're talking about. In every part of the world where I help people and leaders and organizations think about talent, tells me their biggest challenge is hiring and keeping people. And their knee jerk is when I say, well, why are people leaving faster? Why is that happening? The knee jerk is, oh, those millennials, the Gen Z, short attention span, career sugar high, shopping for a promotion, disloyal, don't have the right values. And I said, I fundamentally reject what your knee jerk reaction is. I said, I believe that what organizations are facing is a talent base that has sees the world differently because of how we've created this technology. For example, talent can see more of what's possible. They can see more opportunity. And if you, executive, Mr. or Mrs. Executive, 40 years ago could see what they see, how you can apply your skills in different ways, all the jobs that are open, all the compensation strategies, leadership styles, and so forth, you can't tell me you would be in the same company 40 years later. It's just not a reality. They have so much more visibility to choice, and they're acting on it, and you don't like that. So, but the truth is, when I asked the big question is, do you think that's going to change? And their answer is no. I said, so you don't believe we're in a moment in time that people are going to, in the future, start staying in companies longer? They said, that's right. I said, okay, so now let's think about our goal, which is let's accept that for a second and imagine how can we create value in a more fluid workforce where people are staying less. And I talk about this in the book, as you know. Let's look to organizations that have faced this and done okay. College basketball. The great athletes in college basketball traditionally would stay 4 years, finish their degree, and then go on to the pros, the best players. Today, they stay 6 to 9 months. And even great resistors like Coach Krzyzewski at Duke were like, no, this is not right. I don't like the one and done. It's not good. And then he realized, I'm not going to get the best players because they only want to stay a year and then they want to go to the pros. And that's even changed because some go right from high school. But what they had to do was build a new model that creates value every year. And the top schools figured it out. They figured we have to recruit differently. We have to have a different value proposition, but we can deliver it. And so what I think we're facing right now is just a new frontier of where organizations are trying to do that. And since I wrote the book, I've done even more research, and in living in my neighborhood here, and I'm not for a second wanting anyone to think that I think the world revolves around Silicon Valley or everything's great here. There's a lot of problems and a lot of things broken in Silicon Valley. But if you look at the automobile industry right now, Tesla, which was created here in the Valley, is more valuable than Honda, Toyota, and Ford combined. And they're not making more profit. They're not producing more cars, but they're way more valuable as measured by the investors saying, we think that company can innovate. Their median tenure right now is 2.3 years. Most of the people they hired are not from the automobile industry. So what's going on there? That's interesting to me, that they're outflanking these entrenched, competitors in the automobile industry, and they're coming at it with a whole different model. So you can't say to be successful in the car industry, you have to have been around for 100, 200 years. Not true. They're proving it right now. And I think that's happened in the hotel industry. It's happened in the music industry, the taxi industry. Like, we're seeing that, and people are having to think of different models, right? Like the Ubers and the Lyfts are, most of your experience with that company is not with an employee. It's with a contractor. Isn't that interesting? And so they're in some cases, I consider these are almost like experiments right now. And I don't know how it's going to land, but I think that people, especially in the pandemic, have tasted the freedom and they want more. They want to preserve the autonomy and the freedom, and they're going to be looking for the opportunity to do that. So, but I don't think we know exactly how it's going to play right now, Pat. I think it's still somewhat soft in terms of the clay. And my advice to a lot of the companies that I coach relative to, hey, Steve, how should we deal with this? Is like, I think you need to try some different things and need to look, and I'll give you some examples of other companies doing different things and go benchmark with them and see how they're doing it and how the transition worked for them. And maybe there's some learnings for you in that process.
Hi, I'm Pat Iyer, and I have a question for you. Do you wonder if your writing skills are as strong as they need to be for you as your business owner? Do you have to write emails, and do you have to write sales pages for your website? Do you wonder if your blogs are structured in the correct way, and are you taking advantage of all the different kinds of blogs that you could be writing for your website? Have you been asked to provide a chapter for a book, and you'd like to take advantage of that, but you're not quite sure how to structure that chapter? I'd like to invite you to be one of the founding members of the Business Writing Circle, which is a membership group that I am inaugurating this fall, 2021, as a way to help business owners with their writing skills. We'll focus on many types of writing skills to give you the confidence and the support that you're looking for. The group will create a camaraderie and an encouragement for you so that you can move and present yourself to your best position when you are working on attracting your ideal clients for your business. There'll be monthly trainings, a support group. There'll be digital guides on the topic for the month or two. I'll invite guest speakers in to be able to work with you on specific issues. It's all available at this link, http://mywriting.tips/BWC. That's for Business Writing Circle. You can get in on the ground floor as a founding member for only $97 a month or $997 for the year. If you've got any questions about improving your writing skills and are looking for support, encouragement, concrete tips, please go to mywriting.tips/BWC. You'll see the link on this screen, and I encourage you to take advantage of being part of this group and get rid of that doubt that you have about your writing skills. I'm Pat Iyer, the founder of Business Writing Circle, and I have written or edited 49 of my own books. I know a little bit about writing. I welcome you to be part of this circle. You raised the point about the pandemic changing the model. Everywhere I go, I hear about companies who can't find talent, who are advertising, looking for workers, who are raising the minimum wage. Was it one large company just announced $15 an hour. I drive through my town and I see a sign outside the restaurant that says, hiring all positions, inquire within. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, it almost feels to me, and I know this isn't correct, it feels like there's a sieve and people are draining through the holes. Where are they going? What's going on? Why are we having so much trouble with people's positions being constantly open?
Oh, that's a great question. We had this debate at dinner as a family a few nights ago. Like, where are those restaurant, fast food workers going? Like, what are they doing? And I heard the same thing you've had. I heard a radio advertisement yesterday, $15,000 signing bonus for a truck driver. Mm-hmm. And I've seen in Las Vegas, I was in Las Vegas a few months ago, $2,000 signing bonus on a coffee shop. Okay. So there's a number of things happening. Number one, I mean, the people could say, well, those unemployment checks and the stimulus payments or, having people stay on the sidelines maybe longer. I don't believe that's true because the states that have cut those unemployment benefits are not seeing people return. And what you have now, I've lived in Silicon Valley, tried to recruit engineers for the last 20 years. And let me tell you, it is not easy when they have every engineer I ever hired at LinkedIn when I was there from 2009 through 2012 had multiple offers, every single one. So how do you compete? Well, you got to work on your culture. You got to be a desired destination where those people want to go. You're not going to be able to outbid the Googles, the sushi chefs, the on-site childcare. You're not going to do that. So you have to know what your assets are. And what I'm seeing in hospitality in the United States, 50% of the workforce works in either a hotel or restaurant, fast food, or retail. 50% of the workforce. And those industries have not had to compete for talent before. They've had sort of a captive pool. People need to work there. So they've done it. They've not had to innovate and create. They've not had to really say, wow, the experience here has got to be better than all the other choices. And I think what's happened, and again, just my perspective, time slowed down. People were laid off. People had a moment to reflect instead of just, oh, I need to go get another job. They were given an opportunity to sort of say, I can't go back to work. I just can't because of the pandemic. So maybe I should think about studying something new. Maybe I don't want to go back and become vulnerable again to another recession or a pandemic. Maybe I want to try something different. So I don't know where these people are going. And this gets to another problem that we have as a society, particularly in the US, and I think every other country faces it too. When the United States reports unemployment figures, do you know what they're doing? They're going to look at the payroll taxes and see where they're increasing and where they're decreasing. And that's where they know jobs are getting lost. And if people let more than 20 people go, you have to do something called a WARN Act. You have to file and let your local government know in most jurisdictions. Well, if someone goes to a gig job, someone goes to make money, driving an Uber or a Lyft or delivery for DoorDash, Instacart, they're not being tracked. And so my hypothesis is that a lot of people who had those, service-related jobs, retail, restaurants, and so forth, are trying their hand at some gig work and some kind of patchwork of a number of different things to see how it works. And there are more platforms today, like Upwork, for example, where you can go and plug in and it's your billboard. It's your opportunity to showcase your skills. So I think hopefully we're going to get better at understanding where people are going and what they're doing. But when they go into this independent contractor world, it's not as trackable as the standard, employer opportunities are to track. So it's hard to know right now.
Mm-hmm. And you're bringing up a great point that there are many opportunities to do a piecemeal putting together skills. The last time I had a paycheck was 1987. And when I went out on my own, I was teaching, I was consulting, I was doing expert witness work, I was writing books. I did a little bit of staff nursing. I put all those things together to stay self-employed. It's even easier today than it was at that time to find opportunities for people in another part of the world to hire you and work on that basis. So the opportunities are stronger, but I want to come back to the 2.8 year statistic, because I spent 28 years working on medical malpractice cases, and I saw firsthand what happens when the seasoned, experienced people, nurses, for example, leave the healthcare environment, and the people who are left taking care of the patients are the new graduates who don't have the critical thinking or the experience or somebody to turn to say, hey, I don't quite understand what's going on. What do you think I should do? Healthcare is being impacted by this in an enormous way. And I'm sure you have some thoughts about it, and you're a healthcare consumer, as am I, and you want the best, most experienced person to take care of you if you need healthcare. How do we adjust for that kind of turnover, that attrition, or the loss of the experienced person who can look at a situation and say, yes, Steve, I know what your problem is. We need to call Dr. Jones and get him down here to look at you.
I have a personal experience with this. My twins, when they were 6, were involved in a very awful accident. They were an elderly gentleman, unfortunately, drove onto the sidewalk and smashed them both against a marble wall.
Oh,
And so I lived in the hospital for probably 6 months. They're both doing fine today, and thank the Lord for that, and thank the
mm-hmm.
medical care. But we noticed something very interesting when we were in the hospital, and I spent, every night that my son was there, I was there, or their mom was there. And so we started to notice something. When things would break down, it was in a shift change.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that experience, I was always curious, why do we work these hospital workers so hard? Why are they putting in all these long shifts? And then it hit me, because the moment of handover is the moment of opportunity for confusion or miscommunication or misunderstanding. So we would always make sure we're not taking a break, we're not out to lunch, and not in our son's room when the shift change happened, because someone would come in and say, okay, I see here that we need to up the dose of. I'm like, no, 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 no. There's no up in the dose. The agreement we
Mm-hmm.
had was, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, really? Okay, well, let me go back to the doctor. So that was a very interesting point. And this, I said, I didn't say this explicitly in the book, but when I talk about this, I'm not happy that the tenure of people is declining. And clearly, when lives are on the line, or we're trying to put someone on the moon and their life's on the line, more fluid workforce is going to create potential for more misunderstanding, and the lack of continuity could be single point of failure. That's a problem. And so how do you mitigate that? Well, you mitigate that by having to take a look at what can we do to create the environment, the work experience, such that the right people want to stay here and produce. And the problem that is, I think people are looking to have solved for them, the workforce I'm speaking about now, is that I believe what's happened because of the advancement of technology is that the psychology of a worker has shifted from, I feel safer staying here a long period of time, to, I feel safer moving. Because the more I move, the more new things I learn, the more vital I am and valuable I am to more people. If I work in different places, I've got my odds of, being employable are greater. But if I stay in one industry and I do one thing, I'm going to be more vulnerable in a world that keeps changing. And so, and I don't think employers, for the most part, have recognized that. And so nurses, you brought up nurses. So I have a stepsister who works for a firm that places temporary nurses around the country, and she's never been busier. And her challenge is finding people interested in doing this work. And what the hospital systems are going to face right now, and they are facing, is people are going to make a change in their lives when they say, what I'm putting in and the rewards I'm receiving on the other end are out of balance. And if I'm putting and giving more and sacrificing more than the recognition and the rewards or the experience, whatever that is, it's filling my bucket, it's way out of whack. They're gonna move. And that's, I believe, listening to friends who are in the medical community, nurses. My wife's a dental hygienist. The fear, the lack of respect, the lack of care for that function as a whole is not being well received by that community, and saying, it's not about the money now. It's about people being reckless with their health, or decisions that administrations are making that don't seem to be in the best interest of my safety. I just read a really fascinating LinkedIn post yesterday from a chairman of a department at Embry-Riddle University in Florida, resigning because the school is not requiring anyone to wear masks. Just resigned. And he's like, I don't want to. I love what I do. He's the chairman of the department. He's been there 20 years, doing great work, recognized, nationally recognized, written. But because the school is not listening to his satisfaction, he's like, I'm out. And so that was when it was out of balance, right? I feel, and he's immunocompromised. He has AIDS. He's like, I'm not gonna do that. And so I think we were in this really interesting reality. And I almost feel like it's a leadership test that we've never seen before, of how people are going to respond to adversity. And, getting back to your question, I feel like it's a healthy exercise to go, do I like what I'm doing? Do I like who I'm with? Do I believe in the culture? Do I believe in the mission? Are the rewards, do I feel like the rewards are commensurate with my commitment, what I'm sacrificing and what I'm doing and the time I'm giving here. And when that gets really out of balance, which it may be in that field, people are going to make a change. And so if you're an employer and you're seeing that, well, you have to look at every dimension of that experience, and say, are we attracting the right people that have the right sensibilities to deliver the right quality here? And maybe we need to adjust some things, whether it's time off, whether it's compensation, retirement, whatever. There's so many elements in that and dials that an employer can turn that they're going to have to figure out what that is.
Yeah, there are many dials from the standpoint of the employer. There's many dials from the complexity of the environment, from the technology to the communication to the regulatory issues to the safety issues.
Yep.
It's one of those, the high reliability organizations like the nuclear plants healthcare has been compared to in terms of the complexity. And just as an interesting side note, we used to have 8-hour shifts and people loved them and they finished with a sense of satisfaction. But if you put people on shifts for 12 hours, then they can work 3 days and get paid and have 4 days off before they have to work again. Unfortunately, the patient safety statistics show that as the shift goes on, the nurse becomes tireder, the critical thinking declines, the decision-making is at fault, there's more medication errors, and at the end of that 12 hours, which is really 12 and a half, by the time you go through change of shift, you have a person who's not as safe as when they walked in the door. So we should go back to 8-hour shifts, even though we have more handoffs. You got an extra handoff, but you have people who are much more functional and alert at the end of 8 hours. And also, as you pointed out, nurses are discovering that if they work for a staffing agency, they might get 2, 3, 4 times more per hour than if they're an employee in that hospital. So that's pulling hospitals apart.
Right.
On top of the COVID issues that have affected patients and the staff who have to take care of them, and some of those employment issues. So we're certainly in healthcare in a very challenging time.
Yeah, and I think one of the most underrated parts of the dials for both employers and employees is something that I really think can benefit organizations, which is care and community and making someone feel like they're a part of something. I've mediated hundreds of disputes in organizations I've worked with over the years. And almost every one of these situations that goes bad ends up with someone coming to me and saying, blah, 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 my manager, blah, 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 the employee, blah, blah, blah. And they don't even say good morning to me. And I wrote an article, 2 words that matter, good morning. This busy world that we're creating for ourselves, we're just not spending the time affirming and recognizing and valuing one another. And if we lose sight of that, we're missing something really important. And I think all of us in the pandemic and even before are starting to miss this sense of connectedness and belonging. I don't need to ask my neighbors for butter. I can just get it delivered. And so I think that's an issue that is an opportunity for organizations, make this, and this is how at LinkedIn, this is how we beat Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all these sexier companies that could pay more than we could. We built a place where people wanted to be, where we're going to make this the best job you ever had. Can't pay you as much as Google, can't offer you the on-site childcare that they can afford because they make more profit in a day than we do in a year. But we promise you that the experience of being here will make you a better person. And if you want to leave, we'll help you. It's like we know you're going to be here for a certain finite period. So let's talk about preparing you for what's next. And that was a little scary, honestly, implementing that for like, how's this going to work? And what if people leave? And in the 4 years that I was there, Pat, our median tenure was 9 months every year. And that's not because people left after 9 months, because we doubled the size of the company. So we had so many new people that had just started that brought that median number down. But we created a $26 billion company in 15 years with new people. And that's, I think, a very interesting experience that's informed my thinking around maybe we don't need people to be around forever to create really great things. Maybe new people with new ideas and new ways of solving problems and new energy, we undervalued that. And it doesn't work in every business and every organization. And you and I have grown up in completely different worlds in some respect. But I think we're seeing obviously a shaking of the view of how people are thinking about work, which causes employers to sort of like, you got to get creative. Like, let's go. Like the way you did it is not working now. So at a minimum, admit that. I can't tell you what the right answer is, but you're going to have to try some new things. And you don't have to be the best. You just have to be better than the choices that your employees have. A little bit better, right?
You make me think about my staff development days when I put together a orientation program, and the words that the staff hated to hear from a new employee was, well, you know, where I used to work, we did it differently and we did it this way. And they would go, well, then why don't you go back to where you used to work if you don't like it here? And completely missing the point that you just made of maybe they do it better somewhere else. And maybe we could learn from that experience. But oh no, don't confuse me with telling me about a new way to do something. I don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I've seen that my whole career.
I am sure you have.
One of my favorite training courses, we were doing a training. I worked at Fireman's Fund Insurance Company one year. We were doing a train the trainer, and we're trying to help people build instructional design. How do you teach someone how to do something? And we said, okay, it was like a group of 30 people. We broke them up into teams of 4, and they had to write the instructions of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay. And so then we had someone in the front of the room, like read the instructions. Okay. And so they're say, okay. And there was, a loaf of bread, peanut butter and jelly, a knife and a plate. Okay. That's all there was. And so someone said, okay, put the peanut butter on the bread. And so the person in the front room took the jar of peanut butter and put it on top of the loaf of bread. And so then everyone realized, oh, open the bread, take 2 slices out, put it on the plate, face down or facing up, hold your knife in one hand, unscrew the jar of the, and so we forget all these steps sometimes that people need to understand. But that was one of my favorite aha moments. Like, oh yeah, of course, we got to be much more explicit when it really matters, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that we could talk for hours, Steve, but we won't.
Please.
We will ask you at this point to share with our listener, how can they find out more about you, about your services, and about your book?
Well, first, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope we can have it again. You can find out about me and my book on my website, stevecadigan.com, or you can go find me on LinkedIn. I hear it's a pretty good website. And if you have more questions or an interest, my book, Workquake, can be purchased anywhere books are sold. We have an Audible version, we have a Kindle version, and we're having it translated into Spanish. And I hope if you feel just an inkling of something feels dissatisfying to you, or there's a bitter taste in your mouth around your circumstances at work, I'd encourage you to check out the book, because it's a book intended to inspire hope and optimism versus the pessimism that we read about in the media around the future of work. So again, thanks for having me today.
You're welcome, Steve. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. Your insights are quite different, and from the perspective that I haven't seen before. I've read a lot of leadership books, and I have edited and ghostwritten leadership books. Your perspective is from the employee looking up, or maybe I should say sideways, as opposed to the leadership looking down at the employee. And I think that's an important perspective, particularly as we've changed so many rules and experienced so many new models since the beginning of the pandemic, and turned things upside down for a variety of reasons. The companies that are thriving and surviving have been able to make those changes, change their models, change the way they relate to their workers. And we know that a lot of companies haven't and have gone under. Lots of good insights in Steve's book. Be sure to get a copy of Work Quake and to come back for the next episode of Writing to Get Business podcast. Thanks so much. Okay.